I would like to start with a question to Matt Mullican. His choice to have this piece and this live performance with Elevated in this exhibition was his, and I would like to know what does this work means to you and why you chose to show it tonight.
The piece itself, looking at it for me now and seeing at the very beginning in the department store there's a bed and there's cars and there's very much the many of the things which are represented in the exhibition in another place, in another time. 1935. This piece came to me from my assistant. He said a friend of his in upstate New York had a 16mm film that was for sale of the city of New York from 1935. And this was in the 80s. And I was building a virtual city with the computer, and cities were on my mind, and so I bought it. And when I saw it, I was astounded how beautiful each shot was. And I wanted, in a way, there's not one film, but many, many, many films. And I thought, well, I would add black leader between each shot, and so separate them into individual works. And what that does, it creates a tone, like a rhythm with the black and the white, like closing your eyes and opening your eyes and closing your eyes and opening your eyes, closing your eyes and opening up your eyes. And this person, his name was D.G. Oswald. He was a paint manufacturer from Florida, lived in Florida. His hobby was filmmaking. So he had a 16mm film, and he made all these this work about the city, which he loved. And you see him at the end. There he is, dressed in white, and you also see him in Coney Island. And I think that's his wife or his daughter. I can't tell. But looking at it, it's so modern. This architecture is so modern, but it was a modern time. The buildings were modern, the bridges, everything was very modern. It wasn't difficult to think about modernism at that moment because it all seemed to be doing that. So David asked me if I had a work that would fit to collaborate with him. I met David 25 years ago, about 20 years ago, who knows. And so he had this, he said, okay, can you because you were doing a record where you had artists working with you. So I showed him this piece, which was always silent. And he had done this dirge. This was like, when was the piece done?
I wrote this piece in 2001.
2001. Both of us had kids that were at school less than 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center during 9/11. David was in front of his school when the first plane hit. I was in Italy. I had an opening in Bolzano. So I was far away, but I saw it on the thing, on the TV. My wife had dropped off our kids at 234, which was a block away from your school where your kids were. And the first plane went straight overhead. She saw it coming down Greenwich Street above. She dove under a car as it smashed into the World Trade Center. David, you did a similar thing.
Well, my piece, as Matt said, our works were made separately. So Matt had made his film, and I wrote this piece. And this piece was something I was working on during September 11th. So right up to September 11th, I had written a very different piece. And the piece was actually it began its life, it's hard to hear it now, but it began as kind of a joke because the commissioner was an ensemble where every performer was a man. And I thought, this is so strange to have an ensemble that has no women in it. So maybe this ensemble is dealing with the secrets that only men can understand. So I thought, I will write a piece called Men, and it will be, I will say that only men can play it and only men can listen to it. And I thought, oh, this is very funny. So I wrote this piece, totally different piece, and then September 11th happened. And then I had a very different opinion about what men do. You know, it's like the history of tragedy is in a way also a man's history. So it's like, this is the things that men do, right? Men get together in little groups around the world and kill each other far away. And so the piece changed from being this idea of something that was going to be kind of secret, a kind of secret funny story, to being a secret tragic story. And it's a tragic story that's had a huge effect on all of us. So that day on September 11th, just to say what was so shocking about it, so it happened in the morning. So I'm standing on a schoolyard. I had two little children, one in each hand, waiting to line up to go into school. And the plane comes right over our head into the World Trade Center. And it was so low that everyone fell to the ground because we thought that this plane was right over our heads. And I really needed to write, so I changed this piece. I needed to write something about it. So after I wrote this piece, which ended up being, as you heard, a kind of funeral march for Western civilization, I decided that I wanted to invite Matt to see if he had a visual which could go along with this piece so that these two would coexist. And when Matt showed me this film that he had made, I couldn't believe it because both his film and my music were also about a kind of personal history of New York. And so to me, it seemed like they, together, they made something very beautiful and very different.
Yeah, well, it was it was very strong, the event, of course, for how it changed everything. Because the city, I mean, people refer to New York as the city. You go into the city, you don't refer to it even as New York, so it's a kind of archetype. It represents the 20th century city, and going into details of that. So that city, of course, changed. Down the road from us, I got back 2 weeks before I could get back home, but I used to go down to Canal Street because they evacuated. All of the people below Canal had to go up, so we had friends from school who lived down on in Tribeca in Lower Manhattan, and they had to leave, and they stayed with us. And I would go to look at, I think it was Greenwich, what I called Godzilla. And it was a pile, it was crossing the highway, this giant pile of rubble, which was once a building. And it looked just like a fallen monster, this thing, Godzilla. I used to take my kids. We'd go as far as we could get, which was not very far, just 2 blocks. But, and it's it's just to have the mix of the two subjects is strong. That's really what it is. The subject of humanity as it was, representing itself at that moment, and then how things were different now. I mean, that's really the combination. The dance, you might say, between the two works, the two pieces.
Do you have a question for us?
Actually, what you said was so powerful and so complete. I don't think there is any more question. Maybe after let's say 17 years from 2001, what is your relationship with the city? You live close by, your friends, and you live very close to a community of artists that are still there. And how has the city and the art community, music community, changed since then?
I live in Berlin. No, I live in New York as well, but
I'm not totally sure. Things definitely have changed. You know, I think there was a huge opportunity to rebuild downtown Manhattan, and to a large extent it was rebuilt with people who don't remember 2001. It was built so that now it can be a place where people who have a lot of money can come in and buy a lot of expensive apartments and not remember what it was like. So I think we may be the only, you know, like your family and my family may be the only artist families left in our neighborhood. You know, it's like things have really changed downtown, so.
Yeah, David and I live about half a block from each other on Green Street in Soho, and yeah, no, the whole thing has changed, and the temperament of the USA right now has been basically created in that event that changed everything. 9/11 changed the United States. It's a different place. When I came back from Europe, there was a huge American flag that was over the Lincoln Tunnel. Giant, huge American flag. And you knew it was forever different. And it is forever different. It is a different place. It was, before, it was not so, I mean, people are scared. Still, all this thing about keeping people out, this is all based on fear. And that really comes from that point of view. So that's how things have changed. It's not getting better. It's not, and but and there are 1 million people downtown, millions and millions of people. They're all tourists because the flights are so cheap that everyone is going there. Right? You can't walk down our street sometimes because there's so many people, tourists. It's just endless.
Well, also, it's interesting that September 11th has made downtown Manhattan, where it happened, the World Trade Center, into a kind of historic monument. But I don't think people really think about what happened there or why it happened. It's just sort of like people stopping on the highway to see a place where cars have crashed.
I'm working on a book now, in connection with this exhibition, on the history of my photography. And it's going back to 1970, so it's 40-something years, 47 years of my photography. And I've never really has been considered as a body of work. I have one wall in there where there are a lot of these pictures. But I've been looking at my photographs, and when I was photographing, this is way before I bought this film, I was photographing the apartment that I was living in, which was my bed, my table, my kitchen, my refrigerator, my bathroom, my toilet paper, my socks, my clothing, everything in my apartment. And then I also photographed a small town in Oklahoma where I photographed the church, the bank, the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what I do. I mean, you see it throughout this exhibition. You'll see there's a birth to death list where this woman, her birth, her home, her house, her living, she's living. And this film fits so completely within that work. In the back, I have this encyclopedia, the plates on all the tables. That's the world from 1825. So that's 110 years earlier than 1935 New York, but it's still about the world. And that is really why the film is here, why I made the film, and it's very kind of, with my work, with the photography, I was, for instance, when I'm taking photographs of all this stuff, of where I live, of where I go to, you know, downtown, different shops, and even I wanted to take photographs in movie theaters, in the theaters, just like what this guy did with the film. He went there and took photographs of burlesque and people getting out of the car, going in, and so forth and so on. And because I had a funny feeling when I was looking at these photographs that I'm alive, which is really the string. At one point in 1973, I decided that funny feeling that I have when I'm thinking about that was going to be the content of my work as an artist. And I had to make that choice, and I made that choice. And this is coming right out of it. And when you make a choice like that, it's funny, but, you know, meeting you and, you know, just the whole agenda of one's life changes because you've actually committed to something like this. So that's where this comes from.
Thank you, Matt. That was really very interesting, and thank you, David. And if the public has any question, please feel free to ask. No? Okay. So the invitation is, of course, to see this show again and again, because this is not an exhibition that can be seen just once. And after seeing this film and after listening to this music, I'm sure we can all see it in a different way. And Matt has said very important things relating to the images, that the photographs is on the left side and really deserves a special look. Also because the book, who is curated by Roberta Tenconi, who is the curator of the show, will come out soon, and it will be a very interesting kind of encyclopedia of catalogue raisonné of all Matt's pictures. And we are inviting you to come back on May 26th, on Saturday, when we will have the luck to see a performance by Matt Mullican under hypnosis, which is a very special occasion and which will be really crazy.
I mean, he says it. I was taking photographs of the show today for an hour and a half this afternoon, and just hearing myself singing, oh God, the Vietnam, Good Morning Vietnam, in rhyme with Happy Birthday. I mean, this was just so, I mean, that's crazy. And at one point he says, this is crazy, this is nuts. And it is. So that's a snippet of, I don't know what I'm going to do here. That's the weirdest part. There's no script, there's nothing. It's empty. I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
So the only way to know is to come back on May 26th. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, David. Thank you to Mike Svoboda and the ensemble. Thank you all. Grazie.
Thanks.